Joining me now is Matt Schlapp. He is the former political director for George W. Bush and chairman of the American Conservative Union. Matt, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Actually, there's a split among conservatives and Republicans who often give their opinions about what the president should do. Should he fire Rod Rosenstein or not? What do you think?
I think there's very little chemistry between the president and the leadership of the DOJ. Is that saying it kind of politically, John? And I think presidents should put the people around them who they trust. I don't think there's any trust between the president and Rod Rosenstein. And I would think it would make complete sense that right after the election that he has the people in those important positions who he thinks want to push his agenda.
Fire him, you're saying?
Sure. Every single person who serves in a position like Rod Rosenstein does serves at the pleasure of the president. And the president should put the people in those positions he has trust in, especially at the Department of Justice, one of the most important jobs in government.
Why wait? You say after the election. Why not do it now? If any president should be surrounded, as you say, by people that he or she trusts, you should be surrounded by those people immediately, not 2 months from now.
I would have absolutely no problem with him firing him now. I would have no problem. I would have had no problem with him firing him at any point along the line. I think the problem for someone like, and I don't know Rod Rosenstein, don't know him personally. I've just been watching it like you've been watching it, like the American people have been watching it. And the president needs to put the people around him in these positions who believe in his agenda, who believe in his presidency. And if they don't, then you're going to have these conflicts. I think there are plenty of wonderful people over at the Department of Justice currently who could take this job. Now, look, Rod Rosenstein, I believe, is saying that this report is factually inaccurate.
Yes.
If it is, he and the president ought to sit down and have a talk about it and see if they can resolve their differences.
In one last question on this, though, I do think it's interesting that you, by suggesting that he should wait until after the election, you're suggesting you believe there would be a political cost to firing Rod Rosenstein now. What would that political cost be?
Not at all.
You don't think there'd be a political cost?
No, I don't. I was quoted yesterday in an NBC News report that I don't believe there'd be a cost. Matter of fact, I think a lot of Republicans would cheer him on. The drama associated with the fact that we started off talking about Russian collusion, ended up seeing this politicization of the FBI, and that Rod Rosenstein played a role in that at a certain point, I think has a lot of a lot of voters across the country saying this is repugnant, this is not what we want, and the FBI is this great institution. We need to execute effectively, not be politicized.
So you would like to recant your earlier statement of wait till after the election, and you would cheer him on if he fired Rod Rosenstein today?
John, there's no political consequences to firing Rod Rosenstein now or after the election period.
So you think you should do it today?
I think he should do it when he wants to do it. He's the president. I'm not. The American people didn't elect me.
That is, in fact, true, nor I. Matt, you've become a Twitter superstar overnight for something you said about the Supreme Court confirmation process, and I would like to read this tweet out loud so people can see it. You said, "This Kavanaugh confirmation has transformed into a disgrace. How is it when Dems win their Supreme Court noms get an easy time, but ours get mauled?" Now, there were those, Matt, who pointed out some irony in that tweet, given that Merrick Garland didn't even get a hearing, that Merrick Garland was accused of being appointed by a Democrat, and that was enough not to get him a hearing, whereas Brett Kavanaugh is accused now by 2 women of sexual assault. He denies it, but that is causing an additional hearing. So how do you explain?
John, name the other Democratic pick that the Republicans knocked back.
Look,
I'll wait for the answer.
You go back.
I'll give you the names that all the.
But Matt, listen. I hear you. I hear you. You're talking about history. You're talking about Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, Stephen Breyer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we could go back. And yes, I remember Robert Bork, and I remember Ginsburg. I do, Matt. But what I'm talking about, Matt. But hang on. No. Let me ask this. We're talking about the last 2. The last 2 Supreme Court nominees. One was Merrick Garland, nominated by a Democrat who didn't get a hearing, and one was Neil Gorsuch, who soared through. So within the last 2 years, you have an example of Republicans blocking a Democratic nominee, blocking completely, and a Republican nominee sailing through.
Any reporter that fails to give the full picture of how Supreme Court nominees by opposition to how Democratic nominees are treated is doing a disservice. We all know what happened to Robert Bork. Robert Bork was guilty of wanting to follow the Constitution. Doug Ginsburg was right behind him. Both those men were rejected.
But you can go back, to Abe Fortas. I mean, if you want to go back to Abe Fortas and you can go back to FDR, you get Democratic nominees who were blocked also. All I'm saying is it depends when you're counting in history.
This is really important. Let me finish. This is really important. So in my lifetime, which I said in my tweet, if you want to talk about my tweet, in my lifetime I turned 50 years old. In my lifetime, Republicans have knocked back one nominee, Merrick Garland. You know what? He's a fine judge. He's a good human being. No one ever questioned his character. No one ever said that he broke the law. What they simply said is they wanted to follow the Biden rule because the opening happened so close to the election. What Democrats do is they go after these Republican nominees. They maul their characters. They make charges. Sometimes the charges are eerily similar. I know Brett Kavanaugh. I know his character. Why are all these charges coming out at the very tippy top at the end of the process? I'll tell you why. He's the fifth constitutionalist vote on the court. Neil Gorsuch was the fourth. Brett Kavanaugh is the fifth. He's guilty of being the personification of the fight between blue and red, and he's not. It is not an appropriate way for us to consider.
Okay. I would argue one could argue that Merrick Garland was also the personification of blue versus red. One could argue
he wasn't the fifth vote.
That Merrick Garland was nominated 3 months before, earlier in the process than Joe Biden when he made that floor speech, which you now call the Biden rule, when there was no open Supreme Court nomination. I know you guys always refer to that, but the Garland nomination was either before that. I would suggest Neil Gorsuch. Hang on. Neil Gorsuch.
Can I refute?
No, because there's nothing to refute. You could refute, but you'd be wrong because all of those statements are factually correct. Neil Gorsuch sailed through. Neil Gorsuch sailed through with Democratic votes. I guess your standard now, just to be clear, and first of all, happy birthday. But your standard
I feel like
now,
I should be asking you questions
Your standard now is if it's the swing vote. That's what you're saying. The swing vote is what matters here?
No, I'm saying the standard, what I'm saying is for Democrats, is that they know that a swap for a constitutionalist like Brett Kavanaugh for Anthony Kennedy means that if you look at the decisions over the course of the last 25 years, you would actually have 5 justices who have a reputation for having an original understanding of the Constitution and upholding that in their decisions.
But, Matt, they didn't do it with Gorsuch.
That is what he's guilty of. Listen to the senator. John, I would love to talk just a little bit longer. Let me just say this.
Just answer me if they let Gorsuch through, and then go on. Did they let Gorsuch? Did Gorsuch get confirmed?
Yes, as the 4th vote, and Kavanaugh would be the 5th. There are 9 members of the Supreme Court. This is the important opening. If you look at the senator from Hawaii, who said basically she doesn't believe that Brett Kavanaugh deserves the presumption of innocence because he has an originalist approach to the Constitution. What it tells you, when you look at Dianne Feinstein, who had this accuser's letter for 6 weeks and did nothing with it, what it tells you is that they know how important the stakes are for the issues they care about that go before the court. It means that we're politicizing every aspect of the Supreme Court. What I'd like to see the Democrats do is what the Republicans do. You're right, Sotomayor got an overwhelming support. So did Elena Kagan, who, by the way, hired Brett Kavanaugh at Yale Law School. At Harvard Law School. If you look at all of these other Democrat nominees to the court, they get overwhelming support. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg has called what's going on at the hearing a circus. If you're qualified to be on the court, that should be what matters.
You got a lot of time to talk here, and we thank you for that. Laying out the new Schlapp rule, which indicates that if you are deemed a swing vote, then that has a different set of standards. That has a different set of standards
by
than
Democrats.
Others. So you call
not my rule, it's the Democrats' rule.
It's the
John, don't put words in my mouth. It's the Democrats. It's the Democrats who are going. No, it's the Democrats who are going after Brett Kavanaugh because he'd be the 5th vote. It's not my rule. It's their rule. It's actually not a rule. It's a slur and it's a disgrace.
There are differences here. Again, among the other differences is that, as far as I know, at this point, only Brett Kavanaugh was accused now by 2 women of having committed sexual assault. He denies it. Absolutely, he does, and that is where we are on Monday morning.
He has been accused. He's been accused by one woman with no corroboration and another woman with no corroboration. And 12 people were called on this most recent accuser. The New York Times refused to run the story.
Yes, Matt.
Because they can find nobody else.
We talked to Ronan Farrow. We talked to Ronan Farrow.
The story.
We talked to Ronan Farrow. He explained why and what their process
was
that
not
they
work for
came
the New York Times.
I understand that. He works for the New
Ronan
Yorker.
does not work for the New York Times.
I understand that, Matt.
Right.
He explained why the New Yorker decided to run that story when the New York Times did not. Thank you very much for being with us.
Not corroborated.
Again,
you're welcome, John. Thank
you say not corroborated. Ronan Farrow did point out that he did speak to people at Yale who, after the fact, said that they had heard the stories. Not corroborated to your satisfaction. Again, let people read the story and listen to what Ronan Farrow says.
Not to me.
I understand, Matt, what you're saying. I just want people to go read the story for themselves. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.